Yeah, and there we go. I'm posting a link in the chat if you want to open it up, which if you click on that link kind of on your phone or in another window on your computer, you can drop questions as they come up for you while we're kind of describing the program. And then we'll just kind of run down through that list of questions when we get to the Q&A.
All right. Delighted to see a fellow Oregonian here. Hello, Laura. I'm based in Eugene.
Yeah, love Astoria. So beautiful.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm really enjoying our non-rainy season right now up here.
Short as it is.
And I have no idea where Bradenton, Florida is. I've not heard of this spot before. Oh, I got a Brooklyn, New York. Hey, Christian.
All right.
Oh, we got Sam. Hey, Sam, how's it going?
It's going good. I don't wish to be perceived today, but really excited for this. I got some
embracing and enjoying your presence anyway.
Thank you.
Indeed. Well, I think let's dive in. Got a good crew here. Cassie, do you want to kick anything off?
No, I just for folks who are just joining, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, say where you are, your pronouns, where you're based, so we can learn a bit about you. If feel free to change your name if you came in under me. I think there was a strange Zoom link that had my name pre-populated. You could just hit the 3 buttons in the right corner at the top of your screen, and I'll hand it over to you, Lisa, to talk a little bit about the boot camp overall, and then we're going to kick it off with questions.
Sounds great. Well, hello, welcome everyone. So glad that you've joined us today. I'm Lisa Hayamoto. I'm based in Eugene, Oregon, and I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning at Lion Publishers. Just a little bit of background about Lion. What we do is we support independent news organizations, news businesses. And we do that in lots of different ways, through resources, through support, and through building community. One of the things that I do is I run our signature programs, of which the boot camp is one. So those programs focus on kind of 2 areas. One is current news organizations who are working towards sustainability. And the other is what y'all are here for today, which is new organizations who are entering this media landscape and serving their communities with news and information. So really glad you're here. This is the second time that we are running the GNI Startups Bootcamp. We're so excited about it. We ran it last year for the first time, and it was just such a wonderful success. We had 24 organizations that participated, and everyone was doing such great work and are off and thriving. And we are thrilled to be able to offer the program again, and are hoping to create even more thriving news organizations to serve communities. So really glad you're here. The bootcamp applications are open. And we can talk a little bit more about sort of if you have any eligibility questions or if you have any detailed questions, but thought that Philip would tell us a little bit about sort of what the boot camp is all about, what happens in it.
Totally, yeah, happy to do that. So yeah, welcome everybody. Glad that you could make it and excited to get to your questions. So I'll try and keep this pretty short and concise. I've written at length about the bootcamp on Medium over the last, year and a half, 2 years, maybe longer since it launched. So probably will skip over some details, but we'll drop some links into the chat channel after if you want to do the back reading. The shortest version is that I was working at a local/regional news startup in Vancouver, Canada. I'm Canadian by birth, although I'm now living in the US, just north of San Francisco. And I left Canada actually to come down to the US to pursue a fellowship at Stanford to really figure out how might it be possible to help more journalists start digital news outlets like the one that I had been working in Canada. Because I saw over the period of the 10 years that I worked there that not only was it possible to succeed in delivering quality journalism that the mainstream media wasn't covering, but it was possible to grow into a viable and sustainable business doing so. And I also saw that there were a lot of people attempting to do that and failing. So I tried to, take a year off to kind of consume everything I could on the topic and kind of immerse myself in the practice of kind of entrepreneurship and the lean startup movement, and figure out how to apply all those lessons to the field of journalism in terms of new efforts. So trying to launch new sites, new products, new offerings, new initiatives. And so, yeah, I piloted that in 2019, I believe, with a small number of people. And then last year, as Lisa mentioned, we expanded it to 24 people, 24 teams, actually. I think it was about 30 people. And we're doing so again this year, as you know. So that's the short version of the story. I think a couple of things I wanted to dive into today are, so interestingly, I was writing a lot about what I was observing while I was kind of doing this research. I was interviewing founders who had started journalism startups, those who had succeeded and those who had failed, looking for patterns, trying to figure out what helped to define success or helped people be successful and what helped them mitigate failure. And I was writing about it a lot. And a close friend of mine, Kat Rollins, who now owns the Bay City News here in Northern California. In fact, she was an intern at the Bay City News, and then 20 years later, she bought the Bay City News. She, was reading when I was writing about entrepreneurship and journalism, because I was basically saying that journalists have a lot of similar skills to entrepreneurs, but she really observed that sometimes they don't translate perfectly to the day-to-day practices of running a for-profit or nonprofit journalism business. So like a few questions that Catherine kind of called me out on were like, I don't know how to assess market demand. I don't know how to figure out pricing, whether it's for a subscription or a membership or donations. I certainly don't know how to make a sales call to a sponsor, advertiser, or potential philanthropic funder, because she's coming to this as a journalist first. She didn't know how to create a marketing pitch. She didn't really know how to sell herself as the face of a new product or organization or company. And I saw that pattern actually a lot in the interviews that I did. And so those are really, at a nutshell, what the curriculum of the bootcamp focuses on. So in addition to trying to address all of those things, we really try and help everybody who joins set a clear financial goal early, so they understand, what success for their project would look like. Even if you're a nonprofit, you still need revenue to pay yourself or to pay freelancers or to pay expenses. So tax status is kind of irrelevant here. You have to set some financial goals and then document a realistic plan for how to get there within a reasonable amount of time. So that's number one that we focus on in the bootcamp. Number two is we really encourage an experimentation mindset, and we teach you basically how to iterate your plan. So how to go from the plan that you come into the bootcamp with, which might be great, but perhaps there's a lot of assumptions baked into it. And we teach you how to iterate from that plan to a plan A to a plan B, eventually to a plan that works. So a plan that not only addresses your community or kind of segments needs, but also one that has some viability baked in. Number three, as I already mentioned, we really teach and practice this idea of talking to customers, in air quotes. And in the case of journalism, that's often readers or listeners or watchers or advertisers or sponsors or funders. And so we want all the participants in the bootcamp to be actively in conversation. This is not like an academic curriculum. This is a hands-on, you're doing the work curriculum. There's nothing, so what I'm looking for, we're not doing kind of role play. You're doing the real thing. And we teach you to run experiments so that you can kind of pull the risk out of your business plan early, as opposed to getting a year or 2 or 3 years down the road and still having a business plan that has a lot of untested assumptions in it, which is typically the pattern I saw with those kind of founders that ended up failing, is that they just had too many untested assumptions and they'd invested too much time. And there's kind of only two things that you're working with in a startup, and one is money and one is time. And so if you run out of one or the other, that's basically the end of the project. And at the very end, we definitely encourage you to practice presenting and pitching your idea to both customers so that people understand what you're doing, but also to potentially sponsors and funders and advertisers and so on. And at the conclusion of all of this, you basically will have launched what we consider to be a very small or cupcake version of your offering or product into the market. So it might be as simple as kind of either launching your newsletter or launching a one-page website that describes what you're doing, or even launching a slimmed down version of your full vision, but something that you can present to the public so that you can say, I'm here. So yeah, I'll just underscore again, it's not a lean back experience. It's certainly not academic at all. It's not for people who are just curious about the idea of launching a news or reporting effort. It's actually hard work. I'll just kind of underscore that again. It is hard work, and it'll really push you outside your comfort zone. And the reason that you would join the bootcamp is because you want to compress what takes a lot of founders 12 months or more into 8 weeks. That's the reason you would join. You say, I don't have the luxury of maybe having a buyout offer on the table that'll give me 12 or 24 months to work on this. I need to get as far as I can in 8 weeks to know if this might be something that can turn into a full-time operation, something go from a side hustle to a full-time hustle, or even turn into an ongoing kind of permanent, part-time operation, if that's your vision. Obviously, your vision is your vision, so we want to honor that, but it really is for people that want to launch and they want to get as far as they can in 8 weeks. So yeah, I'll just stop there, I think, and maybe kick it back over to you, Lisa, and then see, I can obviously yammer on for an hour about this, but we'll just see what questions we have.
Sure, great. Yeah, I just kind of want to add 2 things onto what Philip said. The first is that though many folks who apply to this program and who participated last year did come from journalism backgrounds, that's definitely not a requirement. The most important thing is that you understand your community, you understand what their needs are because you have or will talk to them. So I don't want anyone to feel like, oh no, I don't have this huge journalism background. That's fine. Sometimes the best folks are the folks who, just are really plugged in and understand their community and really know what they need. And then the second thing I want to add is this is a really cool opportunity. There are many programs that offer kind of similar things, like you can go to school for this. But because of our partnership with the Google News Initiative, we're able to offer this to folks for free. So it's pretty much a screaming deal. And Philip is just the best in the biz. So it's a pretty exciting thing. Let's dive into questions. Cassie, do you want to explain a little bit about how we're going to do that?
Sure. Do you want to share your screen and then we can walk folks through it? So I shared, you might have seen in the chat, I can throw it back in there too. We're going to use an easy retro board, which is as easy as it sounds, to add questions. If you hover over the plus sign on the board, you can just add a question there. And that way we can track questions live and move them over once they're answered. And the other thing folks can do is upvote questions that they really want to see answered. And so the board will sort automatically by priority. And in case we run out of time, we can get to the most popular questions. Although we can answer everything over email.
Yeah, I think we should be able to get to most questions today.
Yeah.
And one thing, and somebody's asking if you could just throw the link in the chat one more time there, Cassie. One thing I'll just go over really quick because I just have it in front of me is the, the basic criteria. So for this round of the bootcamp, the 2021 bootcamp, basically you need to be in the US. You need to be based in the US. We're going to run a separate bootcamp for Canada next year. The project needs to be focused on delivering local news or civic information, ideally from an underrepresented perspective or addressing an underreported topic. So although we had lots of projects, participants in the bootcamp last year that weren't working specifically on local news, they were often focused on a niche subject, usually with some geographic bound. What I like to say, what I say often in the bootcamp is that if you're trying to produce reporting for everyone, you're actually reporting for no one. So you should have a pretty clear idea about who you are focused on delivering either reporting or news or information for. And it really has to be a reporting-based project. So it can't be a technology project for newsrooms. It can't be something that's aggregating lots of news. There needs to be reporting at the core of it. And as Lisa said, we're not necessarily requiring everyone to be journalists or to have a journalistic background, but the focus of the project should be based on kind of reporting at its core. And last but not least, if you don't have a background in journalism, or for example, business would be another complementary skill, given that it's an entrepreneurship program. We have resources to help you, but it definitely helps if you have some network or resources yourself that you're going to turn to kind of bring up anything that you're short on in terms of journalism experience. Because we don't cover journalism in the bootcamp in terms of like the basics of the ethics of how to report a story. We're assuming that most people are coming in with that knowledge, or that they can skill up quickly to get to where they need to be. And with that, back over to you, Cassie.
Great. We can do like, I'll just put a 1 minute timer. We'll give folks a little bit more time to add questions. Perfect.
I don't know if it'll come through, but I'll put it on.
Can people see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, yay. I was having technology issues, and now they are resolved. Yay.
And even though we do have a timer, if you think of something and it comes up later, you can always add the question, throw it in the chat. I'll put it up there for posterity so we can all see it. No worries. And if as one of us is asking the question, you want to expand on it, or you want to ask a follow-up, please just unmute yourself, or throw that follow-up in the chat. But if you want to unmute yourself, we always love to hear more voices. We talk to each other all the time.
Any way you want to ask questions, we can accommodate that.
Desert et. Cool. Do you want to read out the questions, Cassie, or do you want me to do? How do you want to do it?
Yeah, I'm happy to read and move them around. So our first question is, are you most interested in backing ideas that are already in the works, or is it okay if you're starting from scratch?
Oh, it's almost preferred if you're starting from scratch. And just quickly, there's somebody who is in here from Toronto. I'm not sure if they're going to drop off before I say this, but so the Canadian Bootcamp applications will open this year. So don't totally tune out until next year, because it'll launch next year, the bootcamp, but the applications will launch later this year. And in terms of backing ideas that are already in the works or from scratch, I think of the bootcamp as a pre-accelerator. So it really is for, sorry, I'm forgetting the name of the person that was just speaking, but that's the exact scenario that I saw a lot of that we're looking to support. So, you've got an idea, you've maybe you've been trying to get it up and running for a little while, but you kind of need a bit of support in doing so. You're maybe in a newsroom but you're inspired to maybe move back to your small town, and because they don't have a newsroom anymore, or, your newsroom is part of a hedge fund that seems to be downsizing a lot. And so you think, gosh, maybe I should take this opportunity to do something on my own. Those are perfect fits. The program is very well aligned for that. If you're already up and running and less than a year old, it also can be a good fit. What I will say though, is that at least in my experience, I find that once people have launched and invested, anywhere from 6 months to a year, people tend to get very emotionally invested in their baked idea and a lot less willing to try and experiment with it during the bootcamp. And that is, there's a tension there, a friction there, because in the bootcamp, we really encourage you to test untested assumptions. But if you think you know the answer already, you'll be less likely to test it, and you'll be less likely to get the learning. So yeah, pre-launch is 100%, 110% okay. Post-launch is good too, but you have to be flexible and willing to use your own journalistic skepticism on your own idea. That's really what we encourage.
Yeah, I moved over the how far along is too far along to be considered for the startup bootcamp.
Yeah, I think our hard cutoff is, not hard, but soft cutoff is a year. In some ways, it really depends on how emotionally invested we think you are in the idea already, whether you might be flexible enough to tweak the idea in the bootcamp.
Yeah, technical eligibility is folks who are less than a year old. We also understand that sometimes
the project, not the person, obviously, not a daycare.
We will have so many blocks and picture books. Yeah, but we also understand that sometimes projects sort of ebb and flow and have sort of starts and stops. So if that's the case and you feel like you're still very much in that that kind of launch startups mindset that Philip's talking about, then you can make a case for that in your application.
Yeah, totally.
Great. So the next question is, can the boot camp accommodate a person working full time?
100%. You know, I think in that blog post that Cassie posted, I kind of try and spell that out. I mean, we had people in the last boot camp who had full-time jobs, so they were doing this on evenings and weekends. We had several people with newborn kids, including me, who were working around that. We had lots of people that were even kind of in, as I mentioned, like in a newsroom where they couldn't tell the newsroom that they were doing the boot camp, and we accommodate that. We keep names, you know, quiet during the boot camp in case people don't want to be, public about their involvement. So 100%. And we've, you know, it scales up to your available time. We like to say that the minimum amount of time really to make it work for you is probably 8 hours a week. But in my experience, I'm in a kind of a boot camp myself right now, and you know, I get up early in the morning so I can fit in an hour before work, and I try and fit in an hour before bed, and I try and carve out some time with my wife's approval on the weekends, and I get it done. So for anybody who's working full time, you can 100% do it, and it just requires the will to create that time in your calendar to watch the seminar if you can't join it live, and to do the readings and to do the assignments. So yeah.
Cool. And so after the boot camp concludes, what kind of support is available? Does the cohort stay in touch, or is there ongoing programming?
Totally. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, the cohort is, probably the largest dash of secret sauce in the boot camp. The peer-to-peer relationships and engagement and support and knowledge sharing is absolutely, more than half of the experience. The 2020 cohort is still very active in their own Slack channel. If you're familiar with what that is, it's like a chat channel. And in fact, they're meeting on their own. They have regular Zooms within kind of small groups within there, like people working on local news and so forth. And they're very supportive of each other. And what we'll do is, obviously your cohort will be this cohort will be separate, but at the end, upon graduation, we'll put the two cohorts together. And also coaching continues for a year after you graduate. So we do regular coaching sessions with every project for a year after, and you become a aspiring entrepreneur member of Lion. And getting into those Lion communities that it's like more than 300 different small local newsrooms across the country with decades of experience. So it's just a massive knowledge pool to pull from. So yes, lots of support after you graduate. We want all the projects to graduate and succeed.
And I'll just add really quickly that, yes, you do get a year-long free membership in Lion as a bootcamp participant. And that just puts you into this really robust sort of support network for practically anything you can imagine. And so in addition to sort of the cohort bootcamp support, you have this whole universe of support as well.
Yeah, and that stuff comes up all the time, both in the Lion's Den, which is their private Facebook group, and also in the Lion Slack community, or the news entrepreneurship community run by Lion. There's questions that we don't address in the bootcamp on purpose, like human resource questions. Obviously, the bootcamp is 8 weeks, so the curriculum is incredibly minimalist by design, so that you stay focused on the most important things to get done in that 8 weeks. When you graduate, and let's say you've got revenue coming in, and you're ready to hire a staff person, that's when the Lion kind of pool and network and community come into play, because all of the questions in terms of like templates for employment contracts and templates for job postings and just advice, it's just so rich. All of your questions get answered like that.
Yeah, absolutely. People are always using it as like a gut check even,
yeah.
Right? Because if you're alone, even just to check on like rates for advertising and that sort of thing, those kind of questions come up all the time in the community. Cool. So
Lots
next
of
question.
Good journalism ethics questions come up all the time too, which is good.
Absolutely. Cool. So as part of the boot camp, what types of funding do you cover? Is it just grants, donations, and advertising, or other avenues for generating revenue? Yeah, for sure.
And just to reiterate what Cass said before, if I'm answering your question and you have a follow-on or want a clarification, just unmute yourself and say it. So yeah, so we are agnostic in terms of your tax status. So we do cover all the typical configurations of a kind of a journalistic startup. Nonprofit, yes. For-profit, yes. Kind of combinations like S corps or kind of purpose corporations, sure. We don't go into excruciating, we have a kind of module for each. We don't go into excruciating detail. Because that decision, in my experience, can often be put off quite a while. Well, it can certainly be put off until you've got money. But we do talk about, everything from advertising, sponsorship, membership, kind of reader revenue, anything to do with reader revenue, membership, donations, subscriptions, advertising, sponsorship, philanthropic funding. We touch on all of that. Yep. And we do that because Lion's own research and other research in the industry has regularly uncovered that most successful newsrooms have a mixed revenue model. It rarely relies on most successful newsrooms rarely rely on a single source of revenue. And so we definitely encourage people to be thinking about all the options.
Perfect. And just a quick note, we're going to go until 2:45 Eastern time, 11:45 Pacific time, but we are recording this and I'll send out a recording later today if for some reason you have to drop off. So the next question is, my newsletter has been evolving over the past 10 years while I work on other things, and I'm still trying to determine who is the ideal audience. Can being in the program help me to hone down or fine tune that area? It's been challenging to figure this out on my own. Great question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's the beginning of the boot camp after setting your own kind of financial or other goals. It could be financial goals or impact goals. Definitely encourage a financial goal so that you are not doing this as a, you're not spending your savings on this indefinitely. But the second kind of phase is really focusing in on who is the audience or who is the customer for what you're doing, and do they really have the need that you believe they have that your journalism is going to solve. So I mean, we do a whole ton of work on identifying kind of who are the early adopters of the reporting that you're going to do. How do you identify them? How do you reach them? And how do you start talking to them? The one thing I will say is that just to my comments before, if it is a project you've been working on for 10 years, I'll just give you a quick case study because I know we're going to be short on time, but I was talking to a news founder. They're in a small town on the East Coast. They've been working on their kind of website and newsletter for, I think, 5 or 6 years. And they have at this point about 63 subscribers. And, they came to me and said, like, what should I do? How do I turn this into something financially viable, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, you're in a tough spot. I mean, if you've been working on it for 5 years and you've got 63 subscribers and you're investing a lot of your own money into this and your savings, like, you're kind of already at that point blinded that you're not on track to make it viable. And so that would be the only caveat I would say. So yes, we can really help you hone in and fine tune, but you have to be willing to let go of kind of your, you have to come with a sense of self-doubt around the idea and be willing to apply some skepticism to the idea and be willing to revamp the idea, basically. Because if you just come in with a fixed idea and are kind of unwilling to accept external data that's telling you that it might be wrong, then the boot camp's not going to help. So hopefully that was both diplomatic and helpful. And if not, let me know.
Cool.
But I understand. Life gets in the way. Totally get it. That's a common thing.
Cool. And so next question is, can you talk about whether and how we apply lean or agile methodologies in the boot camp?
Yeah, totally. Well, it's almost 100% lean methodologies. So basically, long story short, my own coach is Ash Maria, who is the author of the book Running Lean, which is kind of one of the 3 main lean startup books, kind of schools of thought. And so the bootcamp itself is a kind of like we'll call it a fork or like an adaptation of Ash's bootcamp for journalists and for journalism and for journalistic startups. So we apply a lot of that kind of, well, yes, we apply a lot of those. I'm going to try and name some, but I'll just say, yes, we apply a lot of those methodologies, but in a way that makes sense for journalism. So we don't just try and shoehorn kind of lean concepts and terms on top of journalism. We unpack it, try and understand what they mean, and then apply them kind of appropriately. Build, measure, learn is what I was struggling to grab. Thank you.
thing to stitch on a pillow. So yeah, this next question
There's my
is
desktop background, but I'm looking at
I totally believe that. So this question is the program open to lifestyle-oriented niche subjects?
Totally, yeah. I mean, Lisa might be able to answer this also a bit better. Sorry, I'm totally taking over here, Lisa. Feel free to jump in on any of these. I would just say, we're looking for people who understand their audience and it's maybe an underserved topic. I was thinking about this the other day. I'm not sure that, for example, well, I shouldn't even say that. I mean, for example, one of the participants in the last boot camp who's just killing it is Bria Felician, and she is her product is called The Black Sportswoman, where she reports on stories about Black athletes that just haven't been told before. So yes, I mean, I don't immediately think of that as a lifestyle. And I was about to say maybe sports wouldn't apply, but yeah, 100%. I think as long as we feel that you've got a real clear focus on a information gap that needs to be served, and it's roughly like civic information, yes. But Lisa, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think the main thing to think about in terms of this is that you're doing original reporting, right? It's not aggregating information. It's not just analysis. It's not just kind of like commentary. You're really truly doing original reporting around an area, and you can kind of make a case for how that meets a community need. So your application would be a good place to make that case. I can blow through these next two questions real quick. So what will the size of the cohort be? It will be about 24 news organizations, and there can be up to 2 participants per organization. So if you happen to have someone else that you're working with, they may also participate. Do we require recommendations for the application? No, we don't. We're going to ask you to, tell us about your idea and really kind of dig into the work you've done so far and your ideas. But no, we don't require recommendations.
You want to do the next one as well?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Sure. Yeah, so the timeline. So the boot camp itself, as Philip said, is 8 weeks long. It's actually secretly 9 weeks because we give you a 1-week break in there just to kind of catch your breath. And the time requirements, as Philip said, it's really a minimum of 8 hours a week, but the more time you can invest in it, the farther along you're going to get during the boot camp. So it's really kind of worth it to try to make space for this, to really give it your all while you're in it, as much as you can.
Yeah, I mean, we had participants last year, in addition to those that were joining with a full-time job. We definitely had people who had part-time jobs. So Bria, who I mentioned, is a great example. I think she was still working for a paper at the time that she was working on, The Black Sportswoman, but now I believe she's just made it full-time. And then we also had people that joined who were able to kind of focus on it full-time because some situation in their life had made that, possible for them to take the 8 weeks off and be 100% focused. And yeah, as Lisa said, your idea will move a lot further if you're giving it, 40 hours a week, 100%. And there's enough, there's enough there that you can, for example, in week, I think 2 or 3, we're going to ask participants to start doing interviews with, with the people that they'll be doing reporting with or for, just to really understand, their current news environment and context. And, I would love everybody to do dozens of interviews, but if you already have a full-time job and you're working on this part-time, maybe you're going to do 2 or 3 interviews. So, that's the difference, right? It's kind of a scale difference rather than a content difference. You'll just scale up the, the exercises to the time you have available or down.
Great. So we're at our last question, and I can take some of this too, but I'll just read it out loud. I have a new early stage venture that is 100% in the service of underserved communities that very much needs much more news and advocacy. The goal of our original journalistic work is to inspire civic engagement, and we'll be launching later this year as a national digital publication. I've seen mixed information online and GNI about local. It is unclear if it's a new national media project, such as the one we are building, is eligible to become a line member or participate in the GNI bootcamp. Is the bootcamp interested in non-local media venture, like I've described here? So I'm happy to take the member side of this question for Lion members. So
Yeah.
our primary focus is kind of supporting geographically focused publications. That said, we definitely do have members, and we accept members who are running publications that are not geographically constrained, but are offering news for a specific targeted community. So we definitely are open to that, for sure, if you have like a very specific community. And I will say, as we grow bigger, we have been talking internally about, making sure our criteria is sort of expanding with the field and the growth in the field. So this is something that we'll be updating as we go. But that said, yes, Lion member. Philip or Lisa, I'll let you take the GNI boot camps part of that.
Yeah, I mean, our primary focus is independent, right? So not like owned by a giant media conglomerate.
Good note.
We did have folks in the boot camp last year who were focused a bit on national coverage. And Philip, feel free to correct me and jump in at any time. But what we found is it's easier to start small and scale national, because then you've got more to kind of grab onto during those critical early phases. And so we've seen organizations struggle if they're trying to kind of, if their vision is very big to start out with. Philip, maybe you can jump in on that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, I would say take the time to apply, and then at least we'll have more information and can, reach out and even talk to you about it further. We definitely had participants last year. So a great example, which I mentioned in that blog post, is Travers, who launched Queerency, which is, basically a media project and property focusing on the entrepreneurial side of LGBTQ kind of entrepreneurs. And that is a national, it's a national slice or national focus, as opposed to one that's local or regional. Great fit. I already mentioned the Black sportswoman. So again, very focused on a topic rather than, it's not geographically constrained. So those are good fits. So I'd say anything like that. We also had Sonia Ross, who was a former AP editor, working on Black Women Unmuted. So it was broader in the sense that it was going to be more about politics and social and civil news and information, obviously for Black women in the US. And again, so not local or even regional, but with a narrow enough focus that what you could get your hands around it or arms around it in the boot camp. The challenging projects are, we just want to launch a new national political news site, period. We're not really the right experience for that. And one would imagine you might, like the 19th, who will be speaking at a Lion GNI kind of boot camp related event shortly, who I happen to also work with. They launched with, I don't know, what was it, 10 million, 12, $20 million. I mean, sure, it's possible to do that kind of a thing if you're able to raise that kind of money. But, the boot camp is really for scrappy, do it yourself teams or individuals. And absolutely national will work as long as the take on that, the other filter on that is a very, a slice or a theme, single subject, as Lisa said. So hopefully that answers it. I'd say apply anyway. Apply. It'll only take an hour to apply, and then we can always chat with you about it further. Oh, and I think I took us a minute over. Sorry about that. It's me always blah 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 blah.
No worries. Cool. Well, thanks to everyone for all your really, really thoughtful questions. We really appreciate your interest and for you taking the time to get on this call.
Yeah, thank you.
And Philip reminded me to drop a link to the event with the 19th.
Oh yeah.
That he had mentioned earlier. Please, everybody, we'd love to see you there. I think it'll be really fun and really enlightening. And there's going to be a section for folks who are interested in applying to the boot camps to get support on filling out the application. If you just need like some space, dedicated space to get started on the application, be able to ask questions, be able to meet other aspiring entrepreneurs or folks with experience in news entrepreneurship, that'll be a really great opportunity to do that there too. So feel free to register for that and share out. That would be awesome.
We don't want the application to be a gate that is closed and lets in only a few people. We want it to be something that's open and accessible. So if you're on the fence, apply.
Yeah, apply anyway.
Come to the event, get some help filling out your application. We want to hear from you.
Great. Well, thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah,
Have a
thank you for
great
joining. Appreciate it.
afternoon, day, etc. Take care.
Thanks so much.